I wanted to get to it. I wanted to talk about Exist briefly. Longest track you guys have ever put out, to my knowledge, in your career. Super complex, so many cool things happening. Neil deGrasse Tyson's on there. How do you begin to compose something at that scale? I imagine a lot of whiteboards were involved or something like.
You know, it wasn't that bad because we already had the blueprint. The blueprint was the Big Bang. And if you look at the Big Bang and how we believe, or the theories of how it happened and how the universe was very, very hot, and then it started cooling down, and you have all these phases that it goes through with radiation and all these different sorts of things. We're able to kind of look at all that in a timeline and say, well, what would the energy at the beginning of this sound like? Yeah. And then when radiation comes and Earth is born, what would that sound like? And then so we were able to kind of follow that blueprint. And honestly, the first 7 minutes of that is just jamming, like jamming with Brooks and jamming with riffs, and like, oh, that feels like that. Okay, that's that. And it came really quick. The hard part was putting the vocals in during the Earth segment, because vocal melodies are always what are going to make or break something. So I think musically it was knocked out of the park, until vocally we had to come up with something that felt like the humble beginnings of a planet that was going to have life on it. And then Neil was an idea after the Pale Blue Dot speech by Carl Sagan was like the inspiration to get someone like Neil or Bill Nye or someone that's in the science community that is a science educator to speak at the end of the record about the human condition.
Yeah, but you want that Neil voice. You want to get that.
I know.
That sweet dulcimer science-y tone.
Yeah.
You want to get that.
Totally. Well, it's such a iconic voice now for our generation. Like, people know Neil's voice, and he's everywhere now.
How far along was the piece when you brought him in to do his part? Did he hear any of the music beforehand? Did he get a chance? Did you guys see him for a little bit?
He wanted to hear it, and we sent him a demo, which I was kind of like shaky on, because I didn't want him to, I don't know how versed he is in knowing what demos sound like, opposed to like a real track, like he could have said, well, this sounds like a mess. Like, we knew what was going on. Didn't necessarily think Neil was going to know what was going on. But then he gave me a call and he said, you sure you want me to speak for 3 minutes? John Lennon was able to write Imagine with just a few words. And I said, well, we're a little more, some more progressive thing. And I said, we've got this under control. We know what we're doing here. Like, we need it to be about 3.5 minutes. And he was all game.
That's kind of what you got to love about him, though. Even when we had him here at the old studio a little while ago, and we had an old logo, and one of the greatest moments that's ever transpired on this show, it happened backstage, where Neil deGrasse Tyson took out a Sharpie and on one of the walls in the studio proceeded to give a lecture for 15 minutes why our logo was unsound, because the circle was under the triangle, which is geometrically an unstable base. And this dude went in and went into the history of shapes. It was incredible. So I was gonna say, did he offer any painfully honest critique or opinion? And it sounds like in the first
he did a little bit, yeah. And by the way, we were going back and forth with him on what was gonna be said, and he had some, he's like, well, I don't want to say this, and it's got to be my own voice. And it's like, yeah, great. And then so he wrote some stuff. We kept going back and forth, but you knew every time you sent him something, you were going to get some opinions back.
You actually have to beat him in a knife fight to play the guitar part.